These movies were terrible. Like and subscribe. There were a lot of films this year that were based on children's books, which was mostly really great, but inevitably there's going to be a few stinkers in the bunch, and I've been procrastinating talking about them because they're not fun movies. I don't want to talk about stuff I don't like. But today's the perfect day because my kids are sick, they've been barfing, they're now chilling out on the couch, binge watching Paw Patrol and nibbling on crackers, whatever they can keep down. And I appear to be coming down with whatever it is they've got. So I feel like, I'm nice and cranky. This is a good time to take out the trash. First up is Christmas Karma, which is a case study in how to make a movie for nobody. It was written and directed by Gurinder Chadha, whose last notable film was Bend It Like Beckham. She wanted to tell the story of Indians who were forced to leave Uganda in I think 1972, and how that left them with a lot of trauma. That could have been an interesting story. I just don't understand what any of that has to do with A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. When you do an adaptation, you should carefully and respectfully refashion a story. You can move it to a different time, a different place, you can use different kinds of characters, but you need to keep the beating heart of the story, and this just didn't do that. It just kind of very superficially used the premise of A Christmas Carol and then just rammed in a bunch of other random stuff like it's a Bollywood musical. It's got political messaging about how refugees are awesome, and it kind of praises the British national healthcare system, which both of those topics a little bit of a third rail these days here in Britain. People aren't really happy about how either one of those things are going lately. So trying to make it all sunny, yay, these things are great, not going to go over well with the general public. It's got LGBTQ glitter. It's got some guy who was in the Big Bang Theory, old pop stars. When you think about this as a Venn diagram of all of these different things overlapping, in the center, you are left with an audience so small that this film really was just for nobody. This film was made by people so rich and out of touch that they show the poor, impoverished Cratchit family living in Notting Hill, a neighborhood where houses easily go for £2 million. This movie is so bad that British newspapers that normally wouldn't agree on the time of day savaged it equally. The Telegraph called it the worst film since Cats, and even The Guardian, which is the newspaper that's going to be most inclined to be kind to a movie like this, was just brutal. They said that it had as much Yuletide spirit as a dead rat in the eggnog. Ouch. Some movies are so bad they're good. Christmas Karma was just bad. I give it 1/4 of a Snape, my lowest score ever, for its total lack of relation to the literary source material of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Next up is Freakier Friday. I wanted to like this one, but it was just kind of blah. It is a follow-up to the really, really fun early 2000s movie Freaky Friday that starred Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. This one just kind of couldn't recapture the magic. In some ways, it was a fun throwback to an earlier style of family comedy that Disney used to make very successfully. There was even a food fight in the quad at school, and I was like, oh man, these little touches I was really enjoying. But most of the characters in this movie display everything that I hate about rich chicks from LA. Just they're very blind to their privileges. They're into pop psychology, gentle parenting, and they're all just sort of riddled with luxury beliefs. It was also a little bittersweet. So this film used a lot of really iconic LA locations, which is fun. For example, it went back to Palisades Charter High School where Freaky Friday had been filmed, but it was very, very bittersweet because that school burned in the fires back in January, and like everything else in the fire zone, it hasn't been rebuilt because Los Angeles has been horribly mismanaged. This movie shows this squeaky clean image of a lot of iconic LA locations, but the reality back home in my hometown of Los Angeles is so different. The streets are in pretty bad shape. There is squalor everywhere. There is poverty everywhere. They haven't rebuilt any of the homes that have burned down. And so it was kind of frustrating seeing this love letter to my hometown and showing it so shiny and good looking when I know how far the city has fallen and what a rough patch it's going through right now. At least the Dodgers won the World Series this year, though. Manny Jacinto did his absolute best. His Dirty Dancing tribute was actually quite nice, but he had zero chemistry with Lindsay Lohan. And it was super weird for this film to bring back Chad Michael Murray, who's now a grown-up, And he's still crushing on Jamie Lee Curtis, even though she's like elderly and he should have outgrown his adolescent adoration of his friend's mom. So that was just weird and a little bit gross. The movie's biggest mistake is that it's no longer about a mother-daughter relationship. It adds this whole other blended family issue going on, and it really focuses on the adults more than the children. And for a Freaky Friday story to work, you really do have to stay focused on the daughter mostly. I mean, the mother is definitely a huge part of the story, but the original novel was written almost entirely just with the daughter, and her ability to empathize with her mother and learn how hard it is to be a grown-up and gain some appreciation for that. That's the emotional core of the story, and this just completely missed it. By now, this film series has drifted so far from the original novel that really only the premise remains. There's some tension between parents and children, and between the children themselves and between the adults themselves, and there's the body swaps going on, but other than that, it's got very little to do with the original novel, so I'll give it half a Snape. Oh, I hate it when you feel like you're going to sneeze and then you don't. Bambi the Reckoning was supposed to be a fun movie based on the books Bambi, eine Lebensgeschichte aus dem Walde, and Bambis Kinder, eine Familie im Walde, which were by Felix Salten and which were about the deer Bambi. It did make a few slight references to the source material, like Bambi has a grudge because some humans had taken his kids. That was in the book Bambi's Children. But the references to this book were very tenuous, and that was a little bit disappointing. This film was made by the same people who did the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey films, and those were actually a lot of fun. I don't usually go for slasher films or horror films. It's just not my thing. But the gore in the Winnie the Pooh movies was actually very funny, and there were a surprising number of accurate references to the books by A.A. Milne, and that just kind of didn't really happen this time. I think it didn't help that none of the human characters were interesting. I really didn't care about any of them. And the movie signaled from the beginning that absolutely nothing bad was going to happen to the kid and his mom. So there really weren't stakes. If I'm not worried about them getting out alive, then it's hard for me to care when the monster comes for them. And that's a shame because the actual monster design was good. Bambi had these like big gnarly antlers and like his teeth were all messed up. He was pretty freaky looking. But none of the deaths in the film were particularly creative or fun. I mean, I don't know. Tell me if you're a horror fan, but I get the impression that horror fans are looking for fun gore in a lot of these movies, and that was just absent. So because of the very loose association with the books, I'm only going to give this one half a Snape. Since I'm feeling cranky, I'm going to give one film the dubious honor of being the worst book adaptation of the year. War of the Worlds, starring Ice Cube, is definitely a candidate because that movie was terrible. I couldn't even finish it. But I do believe that the people making the film actually did have a vision and good intentions. I think they really wanted to try to freshen up this story. They just utterly failed. But because the intentions weren't bad, that's not quite going to make the mark. Christmas Karma is also another good contender because it was so disrespectful of the source material. But once again, I don't think that that was the intent of the filmmakers. They thought they were making a fun mashup movie, and they just made something that was just kind of not that great. The one I'm going to give worst book adaptation of the year, not much of a surprise, but it's going to be Disney's Snow White. And that's because not only was this a terrible, unnecessary remake, not only were the new songs garbage, not only were the performances poor, the dwarves were pure nightmare fuel, but the people who made this film and its lead actress, Rachel Zegler, had nothing but spite for the original story. And so for that, Snow White, I award you the Children's Literature Podcast Worst Book Adaptation of the Year. Congratulations!